On the evening of August 21st, 1955, in the rural farmlands of Christian County, southwestern Kentucky, an event occurred that would forever change how Americans imagined visitors from other worlds. What began as a routine Sunday evening at the Sutton family farm near the small town of Kelly would escalate into one of the most documented and controversial extraterrestrial encounters in history. The farmhouse belonged to Glennie Langford, a widow who lived there with her children, Lonnie, Charlton and Mary. That particular evening, the house was fuller than usual. Her son Elmer, Lucky Sutton, was there with his wife Vera, along with Lucky's brother John Charlie, or J.C. Sutton, and his wife Arlene. Also present was Arlene's brother, O.P. Baker. The household had visitors that night, Billy Ray Taylor from Pennsylvania and his wife June, who some neighbours would later describe as transient carnival workers passing through the area. At approximately 7 p.m, Billy Ray Taylor stepped outside to fetch water from the Sutton family well. As he stood there in the fading daylight, something in the sky caught his attention. Taylor would later describe seeing a large shining object streaking across the sky, real bright, with an exhaust all the colours of the rainbow. The silvery object appeared to land in a gully about a city block away from the farmhouse. This was peculiar to Taylor, as rather than the violent crash he anticipated hearing from such a high-speed descent, there was only a soft hissing as the object settled behind the property. Taylor rushed back inside, breathless with excitement and fear, telling the others he had just witnessed a UFO. The Sutton family and other guests laughed at his claim. In rural Kentucky in 1955, stories of flying saucers were met with considerable skepticism, especially from practical farming families. Taylor's account was dismissed as imagination or perhaps a trick of the evening light. The laughter stopped when the family dog began barking wildly outside. Carl Lucky Sutton and Billy Ray Taylor grabbed their firearms, Taylor his .22 rifle and Lucky his shotgun, and went to investigate. They had walked only a few yards from the front door when they saw something that defied explanation. A small figure, standing only 3 to 4 feet tall, was walking toward them from the direction of the fields. The creature moved with its arms raised above its head, as if in a gesture of surrender. The two men would later provide detailed descriptions to authorities. The being had an oversized round head, eyes that emitted a yellowish light, a long thin mouth, large ears, thin short legs, and hands that ended in claws or talons that nearly touched the ground. Its entire body seemed to shimmer with a silver metallic sheen that glowed in the darkness. In the rural areas of 1950s Kentucky, the response to an unknown threat was often swift and decisive. Despite the creature's apparently peaceful posture, Billy Ray fired his .22 at it, while Lucky discharged his shotgun. At such close range, missing would have been nearly impossible. Yet when the bullets struck the creature, witnesses reported it sounded like bullets hitting a metal bucket. The being performed a quick backflip and ran into the woods, apparently unharmed by the gunfire. The two men retreated to the house, but before they could fully explain what had transpired, one of the creatures appeared at a mesh window, pressing its face against it. The men fired through the screen, leaving holes that investigators would document hours later. When Lucky and Billy Ray went outside to check if they had killed the creature, they found nothing. As they searched the yard, one of the beings, positioned on the roof of the house, reached down with its long arm and touched one of the men's hair with its claw-like hand. They fired at it, but according to their accounts, it simply floated down to the ground and scurried off into the woods. Jerome Clark, a ufologist who would later study the case, described how witnesses claimed the creatures could float between the trees. For the next 3 hours, the farmhouse was under siege. 7 adults and 4 children huddled inside as creature after creature appeared at different windows around the house, peering in at them. The men continued firing whenever one appeared, but their weapons proved completely ineffective. Some witnesses reported seeing an unusual glowing patch and a mysterious green light during the encounter. The men estimated they shot at 12 to 15 of these short, dark figures throughout the ordeal. Unable to drive off the intruders and running low on ammunition, the family made a desperate decision. At approximately 11 p.m, they piled into 2 vehicles and fled to Hopkinsville, the nearest city with a police station. They arrived at the police station in a state of panic. "We need help," one of them gasped to the officers on duty. "We've been fighting them for nearly 4 hours." The scene at the police station was one of chaos and disbelief. 8 adults in various states of distress tried to explain their incredible story. One witness was recorded as having a pulse of 140 beats per minute, a clear indicator of extreme stress. Police Chief Russell Greenwell, who was among the first to respond, would later note, "These aren't the kind of people who normally run to the police for help." Initially thinking they might be responding to a gunfight between locals, law enforcement mobilised a significant response. 4 city police officers, including Chief Grenwell, 5 state troopers, 3 deputy sheriffs and 4 military police officers from the nearby United States Army Fort Campbell, about 25 officers in total, drove out to the Sutton farmhouse to investigate. The officers conducted a thorough search of the property but found no physical evidence of the strange visitors except for the damage caused by the family's defensive gunfire. The walls and window screens bore numerous bullet holes. Investigators noted these details carefully. During the search, the only incident occurred when one officer accidentally stepped on a cat's tail in the darkness, causing a brief moment of alarm. Among law enforcement, opinions varied. Sergeant Frank Judas, though not present at the scene, told the Kentucky New Era the following day that he found the story plausible. Judas had his own history with unusual aerial phenomena. The summer before, he and another officer had reported seeing 3 flying saucers. "I think the whole story is entirely plausible," Judas stated. "I know I saw them. If I saw them, the Kelly story could certainly be true." Other officers, the newspaper noted, were reluctant to express their opinions publicly. By all accounts from law enforcement, the witnesses appeared sane, sober, and genuinely terrified. The police found no evidence of alcohol consumption, which contradicted later speculation by some neighbours that moonshine might have played a role in the evening's events. Glennie Langford would later express frustration at such suggestions, insisting she didn't allow alcohol or even cursing on her property. The officers left at around 2 a.m. on August 22nd, having found no trace of the alleged visitors. But the night's ordeal wasn't over for the Sutton family. At approximately 2:15 a.m., about 15 minutes after the police departed, the creatures returned. Neighbours reported hearing renewed gunfire that continued until about 3:30 a.m., roughly 30 minutes before sunrise. Langford would later provide her own description of the beings to investigators. "They looked like a 5-gallon gasoline can with a head on top and small legs. It was a shimmering bright metal like on my refrigerator." When morning came on August 22nd, the police returned, this time accompanied by Air Force personnel, though there are discrepancies in various accounts about the extent of Air Force involvement. Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation program, would later label the incident as a hoax without providing further comment or conducting a detailed investigation. The Kentucky New Era ran the story later the same day on August 22nd, bringing national attention to the small farming community. The newspaper coverage introduced a phrase that would become permanently associated with extraterrestrial encounters. Although the witnesses consistently described the beings as silver or metallic in appearance, newspaper reporters began referring to them as little green men. Before this incident, beings associated with flying saucers were typically called simply little men in news reports, while little green men was terminology confined to science fiction stories. During the investigation on the morning of the 22nd, investigators discovered that Billy Ray Taylor and Lucky Sutton had driven to Evansville, Indiana, purportedly to attend to some business matter. Their absence during this crucial time raised questions for some skeptics. The incident attracted various researchers over the following months and years. Isabel Davis, an investigator from New York City, conducted a thorough investigation approximately 1 year after the encounter. She found that all 7 adults maintained identical stories, with no contradictory evidence in their statements. Sketches of the creatures, based on descriptions from different witnesses, matched closely. The family's accounts remained consistent even under repeated questioning. J. Allen Hynek, the noted astronomer and ufologist, took the case seriously enough to discuss it extensively with 2 principal investigators. Bud Ledwith, an engineer at Hopkinsville radio station, who was a personal acquaintance of Hynek's, and Isabel Davis. Ufologist Alan Hendry would later note the case's significance due to its duration and the number of witnesses involved. However, the attention brought unexpected consequences for the Sutton family. When they attempted to charge admission to visitors wanting to see the farmhouse, community sentiment turned against them. Neighbours grew hostile and threatening. Just 10 days after the encounter, the Sutton family left Kelly permanently. Various explanations for the incident emerged over the decades. Psychologists Rodney Schmeltz and Scott Lilienfeld would later use the case as an example when teaching critical thinking skills, suggesting alcohol might have been involved despite witness claims to the contrary. Skeptic Joe Nickell proposed that the family had encountered great horned owls and misidentified them in their panic. These owls, with their large eyes, aggressive territorial behaviour, and ability to grow to significant size, bore some resemblance to the described creatures. Author Brian Dunning noted that the owl's height matched the reported size of the beings. French ufologist Renaud Leclais agreed that mistaken owl sightings represented the simplest explanation. However, this theory didn't account for the witnesses' specific claims, such as the creatures performing backflips when shot, the metallic sound of bullets striking them, their ability to float to the ground from the roof, or how multiple witnesses described identical beings with arms raised in apparent surrender. Another theory emerged years later from Arthur Hoss Kanzler, a sheriff from a nearby town who had joined the investigation. In 2003, he told the Kentucky New Era that everyone had been drunk and that some people were throwing a cat onto the screen door to frighten those inside. He claimed that when he saw one of the Sutton daughters pull a cat off the screen, with the cat screaming, he knew that was the Martian. This theory, however, relied on the witnesses being intoxicated, which contradicted the police reports from that night. Despite the various explanations, no evidence of a deliberate hoax was ever uncovered. The family gained no financial benefit from the initial incident. In fact, they incurred considerable expense repairing the extensive gunshot damage to their home. They had initially sought no publicity and only went to the police out of desperation. The Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter had a profound impact on popular culture. The incident inspired numerous films, including, according to some accounts, Steven Spielberg's E.T., as well as Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Signs, Gremlins, Critters, and Poltergeist. The History Channel's Project Blue Book featured an episode about the encounter, and a film titled The Visitants was planned to begin filming in Hopkinsville itself in 2021. Today, the small town of Kelly, with its population of roughly 300 residents, hosts an annual Little Green Men Days festival every August. Joan Smithy, a current Kelly resident who helps organise the festival, dismisses theories about alcohol involvement, describing the Suttons as a very quiet, trustworthy family. Geraldine Sutton Stith, Lucky Sutton's daughter, has become the unofficial keeper of her family's story. While the remaining survivors refuse to discuss the incident, Stith has written 2 books about it, Alien Legacy in 2007 and The Kelly Green Men, Alien Legacy Revisited in 2015. She speaks annually at the festival, maintaining her father's account of that night. "There are millions of stars and planets in the universe," she has said. "I can't possibly believe ours is the only planet with life." Whether the events of August 21st and August 22nd, 1955, represented an actual extraterrestrial encounter, a case of misidentification, or something else entirely, the Kelly-Hopkinsville incident remains one of the most thoroughly documented and debated cases in the history of unexplained phenomena. For the families who lived through that terrifying night, what they experienced was unquestionably real, leaving them with memories that would last a lifetime and a story that continues to captivate and perplex more than 65 years later.